have. You know, the finger of God was the phrase used to describe the 1925 tri-state tornado. It left nearly 700 people dead in its more than 200-mile path. It came without a warning, the deadliest tornado in U.S. history.
All the girls take their seat and the boys close the windows. Now I remember that, and it was over. You know, here we're laying in a pile of bricks.
Then 7 years old, Betty Maroney was in class in DeSoto, Missouri when the tri-state tornado hit on March 18, 1925. Maroney recalling the tragedy in this interview from 2016. She would go on to live to 103 years old, but on that day, Maroney lost 33 schoolmates, including 2 of her sisters. The twister first touched down near Annapolis, Missouri. It then tracked into Illinois before dissipating in southern Indiana. The tornado was on the ground for 219 miles and lasted for over 3.5 hours, making it the longest tornado ever recorded. In all, 695 people were killed, over 2,000 were injured. Many towns destroyed.
There wasn't a house left, standing.
There are no pictures or video of the actual tornado, only photos of the destruction it caused.
There were towns that were pretty much wiped off the map. There were towns that had many hundred of casualties and just so much devastation.
Christine Wilgus is the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Paducah, Kentucky, not far from the path of that historic 1925 tornado. She says back then, there was no way for people to know what was coming towards them.
They didn't even have a watch. They didn't have a warning. They didn't have weather radio. They didn't have telephones or cell phones. They didn't have any way to know that this was coming. All they saw was this big black mass of cloud and debris heading toward them.
Maroney recalled climbing out of the rubble and running into a business owner on the street.
I said, "Mr. Tippy, did the world come to an end?" He said, "No." He said, "We had a tornado." I said, "What's a tornado?"
Fast forward to 2025, we now have an average of 13 minutes warning for a tornado and a 99% survivability rate.
So much has changed over the last 100 years in our ability to forecast, to communicate, the technology that we have.
You know, I read so many firsthand accounts of survivors that went through that tornado, and the one thing that stood out to me was that this did not look like a tornado to them. It wasn't the traditional small little spout that drops down from the ground. This was a mile-wide tornado that was like a big black wall of debris and wind coming right at them. So a lot of folks, obviously in the 1920s, a lot of farmers were very weather aware, so they knew about storms and tornadoes, but this was completely different and unlike anything they'd ever seen.
I can't imagine, with no warning at all.
I was just thinking, we're so thankful for the warnings that we do have today.
It's incredible the amount of lead time we have now for thunderstorms, and a lot of that was the research done after tornadoes like the 1925 tornadoes.
Watch breaking news on YouTube. Subscribe to ABC 7 Chicago Eyewitness News.